Detroit, Michigan, the last full week of January 1963. Snow on West Grand Boulevard, the gray kind that has given up on being white. Up on the executive floor of the General Motors building, the air smells like floor wax and cigarette smoke. The chairman is Frederick Donner. The president is John Gordon. Neither has ever turned a wrench in anger. They are administrators, worried about one thing: the sound a United States senator makes when he decides a car company is selling speed to teenagers. So the order goes out to every division. General Motors is out of racing, not at the end of the season, effective immediately. Down in Daytona Beach, the qualifying races are a day away. In Pontiac, Michigan, a few engineers read that memo twice, then look at each other. Because down the hall sits a room of half-assembled race cars and shelves of parts worth more than the cars they bolt into, every one of them carrying something the 14th floor forgot about. Every one of them has a part number. The men on that floor thought they were closing a racetrack. What they actually did was open a store. This is the story of a division ordered to stop racing twice, which refused to hear it either time. Of an engine called the Superduty 421, 14 Catalinas with holes drilled through their frames, and one idea that frightened General Motors more than any race car did. When the corporation closed the racetrack to Pontiac, Pontiac did not stop building race cars. It just started selling them to you. In 1955, a Pontiac was what your grandfather bought when he wanted to feel like he had done well without anybody accusing him of showing off. The pharmacist's car, chrome silver streaks down the hood like racing stripes on a man who never ran anywhere. It sold on trust, and trust was running out. Sales dropped about 25% in 1956, and by 1958, Pontiac held under 5% of the American market for the first time since the Depression. Inside General Motors, people had begun saying the thing no division ever once said out loud. Maybe the corporation did not need this brand at all. The bitter part was that Pontiac was not bad at engineering. Pontiac was bad at being noticed. Late in the 1940s, a Pontiac engineer named Clayton Leach worked out a lighter, cheaper rocker arm, a single stamped piece pivoting on a ball stud. Chevrolet's chief engineer, Ed Cole, took that idea and built it into the small block V8, the most produced engine in the history of the automobile. Pontiac invented the piece. Chevrolet got the reputation. In the summer of 1956, the corporation handed the division to a 43-year-old named Simon Emil Knudsen, who everybody called Bunky. He hired a 31-year-old out of Studebaker-Packard named John DeLorean to run advanced engineering. The line most repeated about Knudsen in Detroit is that you can sell a young man's car to an old man, but never an old man's car to a young man. In February of 1957, Pontiac won its first NASCAR race. A month later came its first tri-power setup, 3 two-barrel carburetors under one long chrome air cleaner. Pontiac had found racing, and racing was going to save it. Racing lasted 4 months. On June 6, 1957, after a crash at Martinsville Speedway sent debris into a crowd of spectators, the Automobile Manufacturers Association voted unanimously to withdraw every member company from every form of racing in America. Factory teams were dissolved overnight. Pontiac had just found the one medicine that could cure it, and the doctors had banned the prescription. The AMA resolution had one enormous flaw, and Knudsen spotted it right away. It was not a law. It was not a contract. It was a gentleman's agreement, and gentlemen's agreements only work when everyone at the table is a gentleman. Nobody at that table was. Within a year, every company that signed it was cheating, and all of them cheated the same clever way. You did not have a factory race team. You had friends who raced and independent entrants who received extremely specific technical advice. And above all, you had the parts counter. If a component is printed in the official parts catalog and any customer can order it through any dealer, then it is not racing equipment. It is inventory. The corporation is not supporting a race team. It is selling a camshaft to a gentleman whose intentions are none of its business. Pontiac called that catalog Superduty. Hold on to it, because in 3 years it is going to be the only piece of this operation still standing. If you want to watch a beaten division collect that debt out of Ford and Chevrolet in public, and then watch its own corporation try to stop it, subscribe before we go any further. Everything from here is the payback. The first pieces appeared around 1960. A dealer-installed kit for the 389 V8 rated at 363 gross horsepower, running a camshaft ground by a Pontiac engineer named Malcolm McKellar, who was so good at it that the division stopped naming its cams and simply numbered them after him. Somebody still had to prove what the parts could do, and that job fell to the least likely man imaginable. Jim Wangers was not an engineer. He was an advertising man on the Pontiac account and, inconveniently for the corporation, a genuinely quick drag racer. In the late summer of 1960, he took one of those Catalinas to the NHRA Nationals in Detroit and won top stock eliminator. The advertising man beat the professionals in a car built from parts anyone could order. His base was a dealership in Royal Oak, Michigan, right off Woodward Avenue, called Royal Pontiac, which was about to become the most important car dealership in America without ever appearing in a General Motors annual report. Late in the 1961 model year, a number turned up on a Pontiac parts list that had never appeared in a showroom brochure: 421. No Catalina came down the assembly line with it that year. The Superduty 421 arrived at the dealership as an engine in a crate on a truck and went in on the shop floor. Forged crankshaft, forged rods, forged pistons, cylinder heads that flowed like nothing else in the corporation. The most powerful engine General Motors built in 1961 was not a car you could buy. It was a shipment. By the close of that Grand National season, Pontiac had won more races than any other manufacturer in the sport. For 1962, the division stopped pretending. The Superduty 421 came off the crate and onto the order form. You could sit down in a showroom and order a Catalina rated at 405 gross horsepower in a country where a very good family car made 200 and something. On February 18, 1962, Fireball Roberts put the black and gold numbered 22 Pontiac on the pole at Daytona, led 144 of the 200 laps, and won the 500 without a single caution flag. Pontiacs came home third and fourth behind him. A Super Duty Catalina was a race car wearing a license plate. Radio and heater were things you deleted, not things you ordered, because comfort is weight. Ford and Chevrolet built lightweight cars for racers. Pontiac put them in the same order book as a station wagon with a picnic cooler in the back. It worked. In 1962, Pontiac finished third in total United States automobile sales, knocking Plymouth out of a position it had held for a generation. And everybody in Detroit knew why. Which brings us to Christmas. In late December of 1962, a small group of men at the Pontiac plant assembled the most outrageous cars the division would ever build. They worked the holiday shutdown because that is when nobody is watching, and they worked fast because word had gone around that the corporation was about to end all of it. They built two things. The first was the Tempest, Pontiac's compact, whose standard engine was a four-cylinder, made by slicing one bank off the 389 V8. Into that, they dropped the Super Duty 421. 12 were assembled over the holiday, 6 coupes and 6 station wagons for the NHRA factory experimental class. 12-to-1 compression in a body shell engineered around half a motor. The second thing they built that winter is the one men still discuss in reverent tones at car shows. They took the full-size Catalina and attacked it. Aluminum fenders, aluminum hood, aluminum bumper and brackets. Even the exhaust manifolds were recast in aluminum, 27 pounds a pair against 72 for the cast iron ones they replaced. Then somebody looked at the frame and asked a question. No production car engineer is supposed to ask, how much of this do we actually need? They punched between 120 and 130 large holes down the frame rails, then left the bottom plate off entirely. Stand one of those frames in the light, and you can see daylight through it in 100 places. The drag racing world took one look and called them the Swiss cheese cars, and the name stuck so hard that the official designation has been forgotten for half a century. What came out was a full-size American sedan with a shipping weight of 3,308 pounds, against roughly 3,725 for an ordinary Catalina. Under the hood, the Super Duty 421 at 405 gross horsepower on the McKellar No. 10 camshaft, and every man who ever ran one will tell you the true figure was closer to 500. Most historians count 14 of them. At least one respected source puts it nearer 15. They knew. That is the part that stays with me. Every man on that floor knew what was coming, and they built the cars anyway. The order came down on Monday, January 21st, 1963. Most accounts credit Chairman Frederick Donner. Some credit him together with President John Gordon, and one well-known reference dates it a few weeks later, in February. What it said is not in dispute. Every division was out of organized racing. The Superduty program stopped. Men who had spent 6 years building the fastest thing in America went back to designing heater cores. A month later, the Daytona 500 was run without them. Fords finished 1 through 5, and the best Pontiac came home 7th. 12 months earlier, the division had led 144 laps of that race. That was the moment the corporation believed it had won. It was the exact moment Pontiac beat them. Here is the thing about a program built out of catalog parts. You can fire a race team. You can order an engineer to stop. What you cannot do in a company with thousands of dealers is erase a part number. The Superduty pieces were never race team property. They were inventory, sitting in dealer stockrooms and warehouses with numbers, with prices, with order forms. And they kept moving. The entire vocabulary of a factory race engine, available across a counter to any man in a work shirt with a checkbook. Ford had a race team. Chrysler had a race team. Pontiac had a distribution channel, and it had Royal Oak. With the factory silenced, Royal Pontiac became the division's unofficial performance headquarters, and out of it came the Royal Bobcat. It was no exotic build, which is exactly what made it deadly. Thinner head gaskets to raise compression, locking nuts on the rocker arms, and a small set of Bobcat emblems, so the man who pulled alongside you at a light knew exactly what he had just done wrong. You could have it done in Royal Oak or order the parts and do it yourself on a Saturday for a fraction of what a factory race car cost. The Superduty cars had been special order machines for men who raced, which meant almost nobody. A parts book and a phone number meant a 22-year-old machinist in Toledo with a borrowed torque wrench. The speed did not disappear when the racing stopped. It democratized. General Motors took Pontiac off the racetrack, where a grandstand saw it on a Sunday afternoon, and pushed it onto Woodward Avenue and every main street in America, where millions saw it every night. The ledger settles the argument. In 1963, the year the racing was shut down, Pontiac sold nearly 600,000 cars. In 1964, the first full year of the street strategy, it sold nearly 740,000. By 1967, the division was moving more than 800,000 a year. Racing won trophies. Selling the race car to the public built an empire. Jim Wangers put it to John DeLorean in a single sentence: if they will not let us race on the track, take the racing off the track and put it on the street. What came of it was a mid-sized Tempest with a big engine in it, approved as an option package rather than a new model, because a new model needs permission from men who say no. An option package is only a line item. They named it after Ferrari's homologation class, GTO. That story deserves a film of its own. Royal Pontiac did not last. The Performance Center was sold off in 1969, and the dealership that served as a car company's outlaw race shop went back to selling sedans to families. Drive that stretch of Woodward today, and you will not find a plaque. Pontiac did not last either. General Motors announced the end of the brand on April 27, 2009. The cars nobody wanted became some of the most valuable American automobiles ever built. Of the Swiss cheese Catalinas, only about 9 are believed to survive, and in May of 2014, one sold at Mecum in Indianapolis for $500,000 to $30,000. 4 years before that, a Superduty Tempest station wagon, believed the only one left of the 6, brought $450,000. $450,000 for a station wagon, because it had a race engine, a punched frame, and a story. But here is what the 14th floor never understood. You cannot ban a part number. A race team can be shut down in an afternoon. A catalog cannot, because the knowledge never lived in the race shop. It lived in a dealership, in a parts book, in a kid's hands on a Saturday with a feeler gauge and a sheet of instructions he sent away for. When General Motors closed the racetrack to Pontiac, Pontiac did not stop building race cars. It just started selling them to you. So tell me, which brand ruled your main street, Pontiac, Ford, or Chevrolet? Put it in the comments, because half the men watching were standing right there when it happened, and the other half still owe somebody a rematch.